Particularly for today, Tuesday, March 10, 2026. Today, we commence the budget debate for the financial year 2026-2027, and we will hear from the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Public Service as she opens the debate. No doubt, members will afford her their full attention, and as always, it is expected that members will maintain the standards of this Honorable House in accordance with the standing orders as well as established practice and procedures. We are joined today by members of the Diplomatic Corps. They are seated to my right in the gallery above, officials from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, as well as members of civil society. I do take note of three of our senators here too, Senator Morgan, Senator Bennett Cooper, and Senator Golding, and former Member of Parliament Sharon Hay Webster is seated here, coming to support our Minister of Finance. We are also joined by several persons from the constituency of St. Andrew Eastern. I see them waving. I also see members of Minister Williams' family seated in the gallery. Welcome. I do believe I see Mr. Leo Williams, husband of Minister Williams, who is here today joining us to listen to her presentation. Members, these proceedings are all being broadcasted live by PBCJ, and we welcome those joining us via the various social media platforms and other media outlets. We trust that all viewing will find these proceedings both informative and productive. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark. Mr. Green. Present. Dr. Holness. Dr. Chang. Mrs. Williams. Mr. Bartlett. Ms. Grange. Dr. Tufton. Mr. Mackenzie. Present. Mr. Montague. Present. Mr. Vaz. Mr. Chuck. Present. Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Morgan, Ambassador Marks, Mr. Matthew Samuda, Dr. Wheatley, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terry Long, Mr. Witter, Mrs. Dalrymple Filbert, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Lee, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mr. Main, Ms. Crawford, Mr. Delroy Williams, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Sivright, Mr. Azan, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown Burke, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Bunting, Ms. Burchell, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Dr. Dawes, Mr. Golding, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Hales, Mr. Hines, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Jess, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Mrs. Miller Bennett, Mr. Morris, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Newell, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Ms. Perkis, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Dr. Russell, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Smith, Mr. Dwayne Vaz, and Mr. Warmington. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do have some preliminaries, so we will go through the agenda as outlined, and then we will get into the budget debate.
Statement by ministers, announcements. Clerk.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: annual report and statement of accounts of the Banana Board for the year ended December 31, 2022, and its related ministry paper numbered 18 of 2026, entitled Annual Report and Statement of Accounts of the Banana Board for the year ended December 31, 2022. Annual report and audited financial statements of the Milk River Hotel and Mineral Spa for the years 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024. Annual report and audited financial statements of the Culture, Health, Arts, Sports, and Education Chase Fund for the financial year 2024-2025. Annual report and audited financial statements of the National Housing Trust for the year 2024-2025. Annual report and audited financial statements of the Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority for the year 2019-2020. Annual report and audited financial statements of the Bank of Jamaica for the year 2025. Annual report of the Overseas Examination Commission for the year 2016-2017. Auditor General's Department Assessment of Jamaica's Climate Response dated February 2026. Auditor General's Department Performance Audit Report on Jamaica's progress towards implementation of key climate change adaptation actions and plans dated February 2026. Independent Fiscal Commission's Economic and Fiscal Assessment Report dated February 27, 2026. Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that the following officers formerly employed to the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission failed to file their statutory declarations with the Commission for the year 2023 contrary to the law: Mr. Maurice Thompson, Director of Licensing and Registration, and Mr. Floyd Thompson as Senior Inspector. Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that the following officers employed to the Administrator General's Department failed to file their statutory declarations with the Commission for the year 2023 contrary to the law: Mr. Paul Simon, a Property Administrator, Mr. Rashane Clark, a Senior Case Officer, and Ms. Antonia Evans, a Senior Case Officer. Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that Ms. Tanisha Adams, an inspector formerly employed to the Early Childhood Commission, failed to file her statutory declaration with the Commission for the year 2023 contrary to the law. The Shipping Prevention of Garbage Pollution Regulations 2026 and its resolution under the Shipping Act. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026 and Resolution Parts 1 and 2 under the Civil Service Establishment Act. Head 17000, Ministry of Tourism for the year 2023-2024. The report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on 1. The estimates of expenditure 2026-2027 for the financial year ending March 31, 2027. 2. The Jamaica Public Body's estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. 3. The tax expenditure statement 2026. 4. The Jamaica Mortgage Bank estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. 5. The Government of Jamaica Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy for the financial year 2026-2027 to the financial year 2029-2030. The Public 6, the public sector consolidated estimates of expenditure 2026-2027. 7, the revenue estimates 2026-2027. And finally, the Government of Jamaica fiscal policy paper for the financial year 2026-2027. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees. Minister Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on the estimates of expenditure 2026-2027 for the financial year ending March 31, 2027. The Jamaica Public Body's estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. The Tax Expenditure Statement 2026. The Jamaica Mortgage Bank estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. The Government of Jamaica Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy for the financial year 2026-2027 to the financial year 2029-2030. The Public Sector Consolidated Estimates of Expenditure 2026-2027. The Revenue Estimates 2026-2027. The Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for the financial year 2026-2027. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Notices of motions given orally. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, the Minister of Science, Energy and Telecommunications will move the Shipping Prevention of Garbage Pollution Regulations 2026 resolution, whereas Section 457 of the Shipping Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the Minister may make regulations for the purpose of giving effect to any international agreement or other international treaty, instrument relating to shipping or the prevention of pollution of the marine environment to which Jamaica is a party, and whereas Section 457 of the Act provides that regulations made thereunder shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas on the 29th day of January 2026, the Minister made the Shipping Prevention of Garbage Pollution Regulations 2026 for the purpose of giving effect to Annex 5 of the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships 1973 as modified by the Protocol of 1978 and the Protocol of 1997. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the Shipping Prevention of Garbage Pollution Regulations 2026 resolution and the Shipping Prevention of Garbage Pollution Regulations 2026, which were laid on the table of the House on the 10th day of March 2026, are affirmed. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, the Minister of Finance and the Public Service will move the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026 resolution, whereas Section 3.1 of the Civil Service Establishment Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that subject to the provisions of the Constitution of Jamaica related to the holders of public offices, and of this Act, the power to constitute or abolish offices in the public service shall be exercised by the Minister by order, and whereas Section 3.2 of the Act provides that an order made under Section 3 of the Act may, from time to time, determine the numbers of any office specified thereunder, determine the emoluments to be attached to any office, and make such incidental, consequential, and supplemental provisions as the Minister thinks necessary or expedient to give full effect to the order. And whereas Section 3.3 of the Act provides that an order made under Section 3 of the Act may provide that it shall have effect from such date not earlier than the 1st day of February 1976, as may be specified therein, and whereas Section 3.4 of the Act provides that an order made under Section 3 of the Act shall be subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, and whereas on the 13th day of January 2026, the Minister made the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026. Now, therefore, be resolved by this Honorable House as follows. 1. The resolution may be cited as the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026 resolution, and 2. The Civil Service Establishment General Order 2026, which was laid on the table of the House on the 10th day of March 2026, is affirmed.
Thank you, House Leader. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following. Be it resolved that the report of the Standing Finance Committee of the whole House of Representatives, consisting of all members of the House, on the estimates of expenditure 2026-2027 for the financial year ending March 31, 2027. The Jamaica Public Body's estimates of revenues and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. The tax expenditure statement 2026. The Jamaica Mortgage Bank estimates of revenue and expenditure for the year ending March 2027. The Government of Jamaica Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy for the financial year 2026-2027 to the financial year 2029-2030. The Public Sector Consolidated Estimates of Expenditure 2026-2027. The Revenue Estimates 2026-2027. The Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for the financial year 2026-2027, which was laid on the table of the House on the 10th day of March 2026, be adopted. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Madam Speaker, I also beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st March 2027, and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion regarding the report of the Standing Finance Committee, notice of which I gave earlier.
We will recommit presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business, House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me join with you to welcome members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here today and other guests, especially those from Eastern St. Andrew who have journeyed here to hear their extremely hardworking Member of Parliament and our Minister of Finance in the start of the budget debate.
All right. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion regarding the report of the Standing Finance Committee, notice of which I gave earlier.
Permission granted. Reseating. The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister of Finance and the Public Service to take the motion, notice of which she gave earlier in regards of the Standing Finance Committee report. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, we all know the subject of the budget debate is the appropriation bill, but before the debate commences, the report of the Standing Finance Committee tabled today must be adopted. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion for the adoption of the report of the Standing Finance Committee, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
Thanks, Minister. The question is that the motion for the adoption of the report of the Standing Finance Committee be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Ready now, yeah? Having gone through the preliminaries, Madam Speaker, we are now ready for the Minister, the recommittal of the presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Thank you, House Leader. The question is that we recommit the agenda item, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Appropriation Act 2026.
The question is that the bill be read a first time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill shortly entitled the Appropriations Act 2026 read a first time.
Minister Williams.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to commence the budget debate.
Thank you, Minister. Public business, House Leader. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, it is good to reiterate that the budget debate is in relation to an act of Parliament, and as such, we have to go through those preliminaries. I now ask for the suspension of the standing order so that we can commence the budget debates, and also for the suspension of the time for the debate so that the Minister of Finance can present until the end of her presentation. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance.
Thank you. Members, those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Please make again welcome to her feet the Minister of Finance and the Public Service.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, recently on a popular radio station, I heard a popular commentator bemoan how much time politicians take in their budget speeches to say thank you to everybody and their mother. So I thought, Madam Speaker, that maybe this popular radio commentator won't mind if I take out of my speech the 6 pages of gratitude, thank you, and all the accolades I have for the commentator and the radio station, Madam Speaker. I just won't have that in my speech. Fun aside, Madam Speaker, let me thank my constituents who've given me the opportunity to stand in Parliament for a 3rd term. To work on behalf of all Jamaicans. Yes. To our Prime Minister for his continued faith and confidence in me, my family, my husband in particular, my friends, for their patient and unquestioned love. To those who toil on behalf of the country in our various ministries, departments, and agencies, especially at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, to where all roads lead. Thank you. And let me say thank you to the Financial Secretary and the entire team, the various departments and agencies of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. I know the long hours you put in. I experience your commitment. To my CPOs, Jamaicans from all walks of life, who send me encouraging words, I appreciate you taking the time to lift me up. My WhatsApp gets filled up fast, but I don't mind. Your words keep me going. Thank you. Last year, Madam Speaker, during the budget cycle, the budget debate, Jamaicans saw me in the capacity of Minister of Finance and the Public Service for the first time. Jamaicans now know that I was born in Ty Dixon, St. Catherine, attended Ty Dixon Primary School, and then Ferncourt High School. But Madam Speaker, what Jamaicans don't know is that my life's journey took me to the United States to join family. There, I had the good fortune to meet a wonderful Jamaican man at business school, at the Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania. He's sitting in the gallery, Leo Williams. Madam Speaker, marriage, employment in the financial sector in the United States, and 2 beautiful children a few years later started to cement our permanence in the United States some many years ago. But a company in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, made an offer to my husband to come work for them in Jamaica. And so we packed up our belongings, saddled up our 2 children, and set sail for Jamaica. And the rest, they say, is history. Madam Speaker, as I look back and reflect on my life, my journey to be standing here again today as Jamaica's first female Minister of Finance and the Public Service, I say to all young girls across Jamaica, gender does not have to limit your aspirations. I know finance and politics have traditionally been male-dominated fields. To that I say, yes, that's a fact, not a barrier. So to all the young girls, I want you to see the fields of finance and politics as a challenge that you are more than equipped to honorably face. Never doubt your voice. To our women, at whatever point you are in your careers, speak up and claim your seat at the table, even if you are the only woman there. It's your ideas and values that count, not your gender. Madam Speaker, last Sunday was International Women's Day. I shared the day. Some of our men feel across Jamaica because you do not object to the sexual overtures does not mean you give approval. Do not let anyone tell you that silence means consent. Mash down that lie. It is one of those sayings that we are told from childhood days. That phrase, Madam Speaker, silent means consent, is meant to shut us down. It is meant to have us crawl into ourselves and never utter a word about the abuse or the abuser. And so I say to all our Jamaican women, married or unmarried, and to our girls who are suffering in silence, I pray you find your voice. I encourage you to speak out. Your boldness will help to sensitize this Jamaican society and begin the change in the hearts and minds of each person in our society, and I know of which I speak. To all our women and girls, know that this female Minister of Finance and the Public Service is in your corner. And so I say to you, even if no one believes your truth, still speak out. Madam Speaker, today I present the nation's budget for the new fiscal year, which starts on April 1, 2026, and ends on March 31, 2027. This new budget comes a little over 4 months after the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa, that at the last tally of the damage and loss left us with a bill of some US $12.2 billion, or 56.7% of our 2024 GDP, according to PIOJ's latest estimate. This budget is also being presented in the midst of a serious war that has sent oil prices soaring on the global market. Jamaica imports 100% of our oil, either as crude oil, which Petrojam refines, or as finished products. Petrojam projects its sales target at 12.22 million barrels for 2026. Add to this the millions of barrels that other suppliers in Jamaica buy for our consumption as households and businesses. Madam Speaker, the war in the Middle East has layered another risk in terms of rising oil prices in Jamaica. But Madam Speaker, I want to say to the Jamaican people and businesses, you can continue to have faith in this government. We have built the largest net international reserves of any government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the net international reserve stands strong at US $6.839 billion as of March 5th, 2026. And Madam Speaker, if we take the gross rather than the net reserves and measure it in weeks of goods and services imports, that would be 36 weeks, based on the official figures that the Bank of Jamaica publishes. The global international benchmark is 12 weeks, meaning it's considered adequate for a country if its gross reserves covers 12 weeks of goods and services import. Jamaica has 36 weeks, Madam Speaker. Our NIR is strong. Our net international reserves is strong. Madam Speaker, it is instructive to note that when we took over government in February of 2016, from the now opposition, the NIR at that time was only $2.269 billion. But then, Madam Speaker, that side over there has never had a history of having strong NIR. All of 1992 and 1993, they had negative net international reserves. We have worked, Madam Speaker, to ensure the net international reserves remain strong. We have worked hard, Madam Speaker, to ensure the net international reserves remain strong for moments like these, because we know that the true purpose of the NIR is to protect Jamaica against the vagaries of the external world. One such is a significant sudden movement in oil prices. Madam Speaker, here is a perfect example of why we should not party with the rent money. We should not party. We should not party with the NIR, Madam Speaker. We must keep it strong. It is one of our important buffers. Madam Speaker, as a government, we will put our shoulders to the heavy task of reconstruction that is now required following the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa. The Jamaican people know that we will navigate through all the geopolitical uncertainties and the complexities that face us. We brought the nation safely out of COVID-19. We brought the nation through a Category 4 Hurricane Beryl and Tropical Storm Raphael, all in the same year in 2025. And, Madam Speaker, we have already demonstrated that we can take the nation through the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa. and we will take Jamaica through this significant war in the Middle East that has impacted oil prices. And so, Madam Speaker, I say to the people of Jamaica, you have our assurance that no matter to what level the price of a barrel of oil goes, this government has the leadership, capacity, and capability to lead Jamaica safely through any storm, oil price increase, or any other geopolitical issues that come our way. You have the evidence of our leadership. You can bank on us. Madam Speaker, this budget for the new fiscal year is one that I've defined as a moment of consequence. It is a moment that matters, a turning point, a critical juncture, or a time when the results of actions or decisions truly make an impact. All told, Madam Speaker, for the current fiscal year that we're ending, the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa year, the PIOJ now estimates that GDP growth will be negative 1.4% for the full year, for the full fiscal year 2025-26, given the significant fallout in the October to December quarter, which was a quarter in which the Category 5 hurricane battered the western parishes. Madam Speaker, both PIOJ and the Bank of Jamaica have had positive revisions to the GDP estimates. The primary impetus for this is the speed with which the economy is rebounding. For the new fiscal year, which will start on April 1, 2026, fiscal year 2026-27, the PIOJ projects that the economy will return to growth in the range of positive 1% to 2%. Madam Speaker, I do not believe that anyone who traveled to Western Jamaica to look at the devastation the day after the hurricane would have believed then that we would be expecting positive GDP growth for the full fiscal year 2026-27, given the devastation that was before their very eyes. Madam Speaker, that is a result of a government that leads from the front, businesses that take responsibility for their value to the Jamaican people, and a population that knows what it is like to get up and go. We could not have been emerging from the devastation of the Category 5 Hurricane Melissa without the collective resilience and work of the people, the businesses, government, or international partners, or diaspora, and all our friends across the span of the globe. And I want to say this afternoon, thank you to everyone. Madam Speaker, I read the recent Independent Fiscal Commission's report that was posted on its website regarding the government's budget figures. Of note, Madam Speaker, the Independent Fiscal Commission was created by this government to analyze the government's budget and offer a second independent opinion. Madam Speaker, we respect the opinion of the Independent Fiscal Commission. And I want to address directly an observation of the Independent Fiscal Commissioner that he made in his Economic and Fiscal Assessment Report, because it deserves a direct answer and not silence. The Commissioner has expressed concern that our nominal GDP growth projection of 9.2% and a real GDP growth of negative 0.5% imply a GDP deflator of approximately 9.7%, and that this appears inconsistent with current inflation trends and with historical post-disaster price behavior. Madam Speaker, I respect that concern. The Independent Fiscal Commission exists precisely to ask these questions, and this House and this country are better served when I answer them plainly. For context, Madam Speaker, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, measures the change in the cost of living for consumers. This figure includes the cost of imports and the locally produced goods, while the GDP deflator measures how the prices of everything produced within Jamaica has changed. Madam Speaker, we're seeing significant increase in the cost of construction. Try buying some housing material. Try hiring a workman, a plumber, or a mason. If you can find one, as country people would say, you have to pay through the nose. There is more inflation than we would like in construction costs. The Independent Fiscal Commissioner also pointed to the fact that government's reconstruction activities have not revved up yet, and so the inflation, as measured by the GDP deflator, could not be as high as estimated. I want to call the Commissioner's attention to the fact that there is a lot of reconstruction activities happening all over Jamaica on the part of businesses and private people. Madam Speaker, the bottom line is CPI and GDP deflator are related, but not the same thing. In normal times, they track closely, and there's little difference. However, in the aftermath of an event like a Category 5 hurricane, where domestic production in certain areas has been decimated with scarcity influencing price of locally produced goods, and there's a surge in demand for reconstruction from citizens and businesses, we can have a wider than usual variance between CPI and the GDP deflator. It is not abnormal or suspicious. Madam Speaker, I also want to acknowledge the Commissioner's more pointed concern, and I will be candid about it. He's right that government's reconstruction activity in Jamaica has historically been delayed. He's right that capital underspending at the level of government is an issue. But Madam Speaker, if our GDP deflator projection rests entirely on government-executed reconstruction, I would be standing here on weaker ground, but it does not. The primary driver of near-term reconstruction price pressure will be the private sector by way of insurance-financed hotel refurbishment, household rebuilding, and foreign direct investment in damaged commercial infrastructure. That activity does not pass through our procurement system, and it will not wait. That activity, Madam Speaker, for those who travel the length and breadth of Jamaica, they will see that activity in full bloom all over Jamaica. Yeah. Madam Speaker, these two measures, CPI, which is a consumer price index, and GDP deflator, are related, but fundamentally distinct measures, and conflating them would itself be an error. Madam Speaker, with that as a backdrop, I turn now to the central government's budget. The central government's budget for fiscal year 2026-27 for recurrent and capital spending plus debt service, which includes interest payment and debt amortization, meaning we're paying back the debt, is $1,441,781,354,000. Madam Speaker, the summary components of the expenditure budget are outlined on page 1 to 4 of the estimates of expenditure 2026-27 for the financial year ending 31st March 2027. Further details are in its many pages, which underwent robust interrogation at the 2 marathon sessions of the Standing Finance Committee in this Parliament last week, Thursday and Friday. But, Madam Speaker, I'm specifically highlighting Jamaica's estimates of expenditure book to help our students know where to find this information. It is on the website of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. And just for information to our students, in the same estimates of expenditure book, you'll also find the expenditure data for the past fiscal years, as well as the future fiscal years beyond fiscal year 2026-27, because we have to put forward projections or estimates for the fiscal years that make up the medium term, which goes to fiscal year 2029-30. Madam Speaker, of significance, the expenditure for the fiscal year we're ending includes $67 billion of Hurricane Melissa spending. $67 billion, Madam Speaker, of which $24.1 billion was the loan to JPS to accelerate the return of electricity. The Cabinet, led by the Prime Minister, is to be commended for this historic decision. I thank all who were involved in the process: the Financial Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Attorney General's Office, Minister Vaz and his team, for the late nights and weekend work they did to hammer out an agreement with JPS. Madam Speaker, this was a consequential decision. The Hurricane Melissa spend included $3.39 billion that went to Ministry of Tourism to support recovery of the tourism sector. The Development Bank of Jamaica received $3 billion for the M5 Business Recovery Program intended to accelerate Jamaica's economic recovery and strengthen resilience. Ministry of Water, Environment, Climate Change was allocated $3.25 billion to support NWC. Ministry of Labor and Social Security was allocated $11.2 billion, of which $10 billion was a grant to households under the Restoration of Owner or Occupant Family Shelter Program roofs to persons affected. There was also $155 million cash transfer for PATH recipients and $32 million for children with disability impacted by the hurricane. The Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information was allocated $2.3 billion, Madam Speaker, to include $1 million to each of the 616 schools identified. The Ministry of Health and Wellness was allocated $2.3 billion for relief and recovery. The Ministry of Agriculture received $3 billion for relief and recovery within the agriculture and fisheries sector. $1.5 billion went to the Ministry of Energy, Transport and Telecommunication for its various departments and agencies. Ministry of Local Government and Community Development was allocated $4.6 billion for NSWMA pre- and post-hurricane cleanup, central government support to municipal corporations, and ODPEM post-relief efforts. Madam Speaker, there were some smaller amounts that are worth mentioning because of what they are going to do or what they have done. There was approximately in the budget, included in the budget, Madam Speaker, these are non-hurricane work that government must do in order to help government to work better. And there was 19 million for the backlog audit project, which is aimed at reducing the number of unaudited financial statements prepared by municipal corporations, some statutory bodies, executive agencies, and some internationally funded projects, as well as the annual appropriation accounts of ministries and departments. The Office of the Children's Advocate received 121 million for relocation. So did the Office of the Independent Commission of Investigations, 372 million. 1.86 billion for implementation for NITS, 1.5 billion for Rural Economic Development Initiative 2, 225 million for Integrated Community Development Project 2, 150 million for strengthening cybersecurity in Jamaica, to include expanding the pool of specialized cybersecurity professionals, 5.5 billion for maintenance of secondary roads, 760 million for the Hope Housing, and 50.3 billion for payment of pensions. Madam Speaker, on the other side of the ledger, the projected revenues and grants for the national budget is 1,083,532,300,000. This includes the revenue measures and the 11.4 billion from the NHT. These revenue measures, Madam Speaker, were announced in February when I tabled the fiscal policy papers and budget documents in Parliament, and I will speak more on these. Madam Speaker, I want to start with a special focus on MSMEs. This government remains committed to ensuring that micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises benefit meaningfully from public procurement opportunities. Through collaboration, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service and the Public Procurement Commission, we're strengthening support for small businesses seeking to participate in government procurement. The Commission, the Public Procurement Commission, has already begun engaging the MSMEs to guide their members through the supplier registration process. A series of targeted engagements will continue to assist entrepreneurs in completing registration and understanding how to compete effectively for government contracts. In the upcoming financial year, we will also advance the implementation of the public procurement set-asides framework, which allows portion of government procurement to be reserved for Jamaican suppliers, including micro and small enterprises. In partnership, Madam Speaker, with the Public Procurement Commission, we will establish and maintain a verified list of qualifying MSME suppliers to enable procuring entities to easily identify eligible businesses when applying the set-asides provisions. Once the system is operational, the Ministry will issue a renewed directive to public bodies mandating utilization of the set-aside order with special emphasis on micro-enterprises with annual turnover below $15 million and small enterprises with turnover between 15 million and 75 million. At the same time, Madam Speaker, we will continue working with the Public Procurement Commission to simplify and streamline the supplier registration system so that businesses can more easily enter the public procurement market. These initiatives will ensure that government's procurement not only delivers value for money, but also serves as a powerful tool for inclusive economic growth by opening more opportunities for Jamaican entrepreneurs to supply goods and services to the government. It was never repealed, but the systems mentioned in the government circular are not operational. Now that the Public Procurement Commission maintains a registry, I've already discussed with them taking over the role of verifying qualifying suppliers and maintaining the list of qualified MSMEs. There will, however, be a need for some website software changes, and the PPC will likely need some additional budgetary support to execute the changes. Madam Speaker, it is possible to get done in this new fiscal year. I know the PPC will need some support, and I am committed. Once the system is modified, a new circular will be issued focused on micro and small enterprises. Madam Speaker, the Public Procurement Set-Asides Order 2019 defines a medium enterprise as having a turnover of between 75 million and 425 million. A micro enterprise is having a turnover of less than 15 million, and small enterprises between 15 million to 75 million. I wholeheartedly believe we need to give plenty of hand-holding assistance to entities with turnover below $75 million to help them to navigate the complexities of the government's procurement system. The good news is no amendments are needed to the Act. It is the operationalization of the Act and regulations to which we must attend with haste. The SMEs can wait no longer. Madam Speaker, I turn now to the financial sector. Looking forward, Madam Speaker, reconstruction and growth will require the collective efforts of all of us as citizens, as businesses, government, but especially the financial sector. I want to pause just to commend Jamaicans, especially the farmers and Minister Green. When you look across the economy, the farmers are doing their part. They did not sit around lamenting that, boy, in July of 2024, Beryl mashed me up. Then Tropical Storm Raphael in October of the same year lashed me with rain. Can't done, and by the time we plant up and start reaping again, bam, a Category 5 hurricane in October. No, our farmers got up and they ran back into the fields to start planting again. JPS did its part to get electricity back within 5 months. Thank you, JPS and your team. Thank you, Minister Vaz. Madam Speaker, the telecom providers ran as fast as they could as well to get connectivity back in the badly damaged parishes. Thank you, telecom providers. We often cuss you when our calls are not going through and our phone screens are only saying connecting, connecting, connecting. So when you do something well, we need to commend you. I want to thank Minister Samuda and the NWC crew. Another entity that Jamaicans often have choice words for when they dig up the road. But this time, I want to say thank you, NWC. You worked tirelessly to have water back to the damaged parishes. Of course, first out of the blocks was the NWA, the JDF, and the JCF. And a big thank you must go to our Prime Minister. must go to Minister Morgan as well, Dr. Hunter and team from NWA, Commissioner Blake and the many members of the JCF, Commander Wims Gorman and the dedicated women and men of the JDF and ODPEM. Madam Speaker, all across Jamaica, we can see evidence of green shoots. We know that our Jamaican people, our industries, our international partners, our government are working on restoration, recovery, and growth. Madam Speaker, I've entitled this portion of my speech that's focused on the financial sector, Unlocking Capital for Industry. For the insurance sector, Madam Speaker, there's a comprehensive framework. And for the securities dealers, there's the IOSCO framework. If you take a step back, Madam Speaker, and unemotionally assess the financial sector, you will conclude that our financial sector is at a more secure place based on many different factors. However, Madam Speaker, when I speak with the industry members, they point to several reforms that the government can do to have the sector produce more without unnecessarily increasing its risk. That said, Madam Speaker, I've gathered a list of reforms that the financial sector has been asking for. And the segment of the financial sector to which I speak are the securities dealers, life insurance companies, and pension funds, those supervised by the FSC. So, Madam Speaker, the government will be beginning with a carefully calibrated package of regulatory reforms designed to mobilize pools of local institutional savings from pension funds and the life insurance sector so that they can play a greater yet prudentially governed role in financing infrastructure, housing, energy, and productive private sector investment. These measures are practical, evidence-based, and sequenced to protect financial stability while unlocking capital for growth. Let me start with pensions. The funds held in pensions accounts are long-dated and patient funds, with investors whose return horizons naturally align with the long-term national investment needs. At present, pension funds face a 5% limit of total assets for investment in the equity of private companies. This constraint has materially limited the ability of pension schemes to participate in local corporate and infrastructure financing. Beginning in the new fiscal year, we will begin a process aimed at increasing the percentage of their assets that they can invest in the equity of private companies. We anticipate that together with the Financial Services Commission, we will take a small but consequential step to increase the pension fund private asset limit from 5% of total assets to 7.5% of total assets. This represents a measured, reversible step to allow funds to begin reallocating to well-governed private investments that match their long-term liabilities. Subject to supervisory monitoring, and in the absence of any unforeseen adverse consequences, we will complete the second phase of this increase to 10% by April of 2027. Madam Speaker, for an order of magnitude of this shift, as at the end of September 2025, pension funds held approximately $847 billion in invested assets, of which roughly $42.4 billion, based on the current 5% limited, is available for investment in the equity of private companies. Under the first phase of this change, An additional $21.2 billion of long-term capital will be allowed to be invested in private companies. Subject to supervisory monitoring, we will complete the second phase and raise the limit to 10%. Madam Speaker, that would be additional funds. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the pension industry has been asking for completion of phase 2 since I arrived at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. And my commitment to the industry is to get phase 2 done. No excuse, but were it not for intervening events of an election and Category 5 Hurricane Melissa, it would have been tabled. I know that further drafting instructions were sent to CPC recently. After this revision, the draft bill will need to go to the Attorney General's chambers, legal reform, and then back to the FSC. There's a companion bill that also needs tax review, TAJ's review. But what I can say to the pensions industry is I remain committed to seeing the passage of phase 2. Madam Speaker, in the area of foreign currency denominated securities issued by locally domiciled issuers, we will also take steps to adjust the limit. At present, pension funds and life insurance companies face a 10% limit for investment in foreign assets. By early in the new fiscal year, working with the FSC and the BOJ, we should be in a position to increase the foreign asset limit for pension funds and insurance companies from 10% to 15% of total assets. Together with the regulators, we will simplify the regulations for the assets they are allowed to hold. The BOJ has advised that by June it will make adjustment to the limit and simplify the FX regulation. Of note, Madam Speaker, the additional 5% will be restricted to foreign currency denominated securities issued by locally domiciled issuers. This targeted change, to a large extent, preserves overall caps on external exposure while enabling pension funds to enhance their currency management and invest in high-quality local currency, local dollars investment. Madam Speaker, life insurance are another critical source of long-term capital. Under the current interpretation of Regulation 47 of the Insurance Regulation, insurers may invest in corporate debt only where multiple prescriptive conditions are fulfilled simultaneously. This effectively restricts insurance to publicly listed, rated, and collateralized securities. This de facto exclusion of many otherwise creditworthy domestic issuers constrains insurer investment returns and limits the development of the corporate debt market. Madam Speaker, what does this mean for private companies and the economy in general? It creates a meaningful new source of patient, long-dated, local financing under the 2 phases, given projected asset growth that can be deployed into corporate expansion, working capital, and project finance. For many mid-sized firms and infrastructure projects that face limited access to long-term bank credit, this represents an alternative funding channel with the potential for longer maturities and more competitive pricing. Madam Speaker, to address this, we will simplify Regulation 47 so that insurers can invest in corporate debt where either of 2 objective criteria is met. The revised framework will permit investments where instruments are secured by adequate collateral and bear fixed interest, or where instruments are issued, secured, or guaranteed by a solvent company assessed to be investment grade by a recognized rating provider, and that meets a 2 times fixed charge earnings test over the prior 2 years. This change preserves important safeguards while expanding the investable universe and encouraging a deeper domestic corporate debt market. Madam Speaker, these changes will be reinforced by a set of complementary reforms the regulators will advance in parallel. First, we will review the capital adequacy framework for securities dealers in an effort to remove any elements that discourage intermediation in government and high-quality corporate securities. Second, we will introduce a risk-sensitive concentration framework for securities dealers, pension funds, and insurers that place greater emphasis by issuer quality and asset class rather than relying on blunt uniform caps. Third, we will examine the repurchase agreements framework with a focus on allowable assets and eligible collateral. And finally, Madam Speaker, we will look to reform collective investment schemes rules, exploring the efficacy of unit holder limits and liquidity management. Together, Madam Speaker, these measures will strengthen market functioning while protecting savers and policyholders. Taken together, Madam Speaker, these reforms seek to increase the flow of long-term domestic savings into productive investments, deepen our capital markets, improve price discovery and liquidity, and strengthen the capacity of pension funds and insurers to meet long-term obligations. They're aimed at lowering financing costs for infrastructure and private firms. They're aimed at supporting job creation, and they're aimed at contributing to a more resilient, diversified financial ecosystem. Madam Speaker, these proposals reflect a careful balance. We're removing unnecessary constraints that have kept capital idle, while embedding prudent governance and supervisory safeguards that protect investors, policyholders, pensioners, and the broader economy. With these measures, Jamaica will better mobilize its own savings, Madam Speaker, to finance our development priorities and strengthen the foundation for sustainable growth. Right. Madam Speaker, the reform of the current primary dealers system remains a key strategic objective of the government, as well as a well-functioning primary dealers framework is essential to the continued development of the domestic debt market. The primary responsibility of primary dealers is to act as market makers, facilitating the trading of Government of Jamaica and Bank of Jamaica securities. This role supports secondary market liquidity, improves price discovery, reduces market and refinancing risk for the government, broadens the investor base for government and Bank of Jamaica securities, and ultimately, Madam Speaker, lowers the cost of funding for the government. During the upcoming fiscal year, the government will continue to engage the BOJ on the introduction of new types of instruments to have a more diverse suite of instruments in the portfolio. The introduction of new instruments is expected to improve liquidity and flexibility, allowing investors to match products to their cash flow needs and risk preferences, while offering the government more competitive funding options. New instruments may also enhance market resilience, stability, and financial depth, contributing again to the development of a robust domestic debt market. Madam Speaker, I know that ordinary Jamaicans who are focused on putting dinner on the table may not be conversant with fixed income trading platforms or the many reforms I have outlined or how it would affect their lives positively. But that is what governments must do: identify friction in the economy and solve it for the benefit of the people. And so, Madam Speaker, our plan is to transform the traditional opaque and fragmented bond markets by centralizing access, automating workflows, and unlocking powerful analytics for all participants. The fixed income trading platforms will establish a centralized and standardized framework for the listing, trading, and management of Government of Jamaica's securities. The implementation of the platform is expected to reduce transaction, settlement time, and counterparty risks, and increase participation by both domestic and international investors, thereby broadening the investor base, strengthening price discovery, supporting the development of an efficient yield curve, and enhancing liquidity in the secondary market. Other benefits that are anticipated to be derived from the implementation of the platform are enhanced trading efficiency, transparency, and overall market development within the domestic debt market. To increase secondary market trading, the Government of Jamaica, in collaboration with the BOJ, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and the Financial Services Commission, intends to launch the fixed income trading platform in very short order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, all of these reforms that I've outlined for the financial sector have one aim, Madam Speaker: to make the financial sector work better for the Jamaican people and the businesses, full stop. Madam Speaker, in the banking sector, the Bank of Jamaica has done a lot of work in its efforts to make it easier to switch bank accounts and compare fees. Jamaicans are expected to find it easier to switch bank accounts and compare fees starting in this year of our Lord 2026, as the Bank of Jamaica moves forward with initiatives to increase competition in the banking sector. I can assure Jamaicans that there are concrete steps aimed at addressing long-standing consumer concerns about banking services. A new comparison website is scheduled for launch this year. The platform will allow consumers to easily compare banking fees, charges, and interest rates across financial institutions. The development of this site has been approved, with focus group testing and marketing campaigns planned ahead of its rollout. This initiative, Madam Speaker, is expected to significantly enhance transparency in banking costs. This is anticipated to encourage more competitive deposit pricing, lower funding costs for financial institutions, and improve the transition of monetary policy. This has benefits for government as well as ordinary Jamaicans. For government, this will support more accurate pricing and greater participation in Government of Jamaica's domestic debt instruments. We're going to need our local financial sector to come through with low-cost financing for government to help with the reconstruction and to finance the budget for this upcoming year. For businesses and consumers, over time, enhanced consumer confidence, market discipline, and financial innovation is expected to help deepen liquidity and broaden markets. Madam Speaker, in the upcoming fiscal year as well, the Bank of Jamaica intends to roll out a national electronic Know Your Customer platform to streamline and standardize the process of opening bank accounts. It will expand financial inclusion and reduce paperwork. The system will function as a secure, centralized digital gateway for identity verification and customer due diligence, enabling banks to onboard customers more efficiently through a single access point. The initiative is designed to fix existing Know Your Customer processes that the BOJ says are manual, repetitive, costly, and inefficient. This project has reached approximately 50% completion, with vendor selection and implementation planning currently underway. The eKYC utility, Madam Speaker, forms part of Jamaica's wider effort to modernize and digitize its financial infrastructure. Madam Speaker, a modernized and digitized financial infrastructure can significantly strengthen financial markets by improving efficiency, transparency, and liquidity while reducing costs and risks. It is expected to enhance market accessibility, strengthen investor confidence, and ultimately lower borrowing costs for government, for businesses, and customers. Madam Speaker, Jamaicans are attuned to the significant benefit of the government having a rainy day fund, a hurricane fund. We're working to replenish the suite of disaster risk financing instruments to protect against the uncertainty of natural disasters. Accordingly, the government intends to renew the CRIF insurance policy. The government will also maintain savings in the NNDRF, the NDF, and contingency funds, as well as seek to renew contingency credit lines to bolster our risk retention capabilities. The government will also continue to explore other instruments to build structural resilience, thereby mitigating potential damage with a stable outlook. And Fitch at BB- equally with a stable outlook. Madam Speaker, if I were able to get the chart up on the screen, it would show that all the dates for the ratings and the ratings changes are all after the Category 5 hurricane. This is unprecedented. Unprecedented in Jamaica's history. And the people of Jamaica are to be commended for the sacrifices that they have made to have our international credit rating so aligned. Confidence of our rating agencies and our international partners in Jamaica's credit worthiness is not just for investors overseas. It is for us here as well, Madam Speaker. It means we have greater certainty about our economic affairs. Certainty about our economic affairs. Not every country in the world has this kind of certainty that we enjoy in Jamaica. We can wake up and know that if we have money in the bank, we can put our ATM cards in the machine and pull out what we need without asking anybody anything. We know we have the freedom to travel. We don't have to line up if we need some foreign exchange to buy a personal item on a platform halfway around the world. And we have certainty that our children can go to school. Life could be very miserable, Madam Speaker, if Jamaica loses the faith and confidence that the global financial market has in us. We have to guard these ratings and strive to make them better. Madam Speaker, these credit ratings are our oil. They are our gold, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spent a lot of time on the financial sector reforms, and it is with good reason. We will need the financial sector this upcoming year to help to fund the financing gap that we have. If you look at the screen, Madam Speaker, you will see that for the fiscal year, the new fiscal year coming up, we have a budget deficit, a fiscal deficit of $190.6 billion. We also have debt payment, and I'm sorry, there should be a parentheses around those numbers, of $167.6 billion. This gives us a total of $358.2 billion in terms of the total financing gap for this new fiscal year. In order to fund that, Madam Speaker, we will have to borrow $247 billion, and hence my focus on our financial sector and the many reforms to do so that they can easily help us to fund this gap. We have other flows, Madam Speaker, $7.2 billion, and we will fully close the gap with cash reserves of $103.9 billion. In our medium-term debt management strategy book, we detail for the market when we are likely to be in the market for funding. You will note the issues we plan to reopen and all the associated dates. I know that that chart is a little too tiny. Well, in terms of the print, it's too tiny, but it's in our medium-term debt management book. It's all detailed there for the financial sector to see exactly what we will be doing, what dates we plan to do it on, what are the instrument type, and the method of issue. Additionally, Madam Speaker, there's also a page that shows for the fiscal year that we're in, how we will close that in terms of the proposed, the treasury bills that we have done already and those to come for that year. Madam Speaker, before I go to the revenue measures that were laid on the table of Parliament, that's Ministry Paper number 17, I'd like to remind Jamaicans of the history of revenue measures. And if I could get that chart, I'd speak to it. Madam Speaker, if you go back to 2012, you can see that every year, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, the PNP government of the day brought 19 billion of tax measures in fiscal year 2012, 15 billion in fiscal year 2013, 7 billion in fiscal year 2014, and 10 billion in fiscal year 2015. When we took over in 2016, with our promise to raise the threshold to 1.5, and we came in, we had to increase taxes, but we also offset those. Well, the increase in the threshold to 1.5 was offset with taxes. But Madam Speaker, for those looking on, will tell you that it was revenue neutral. So, right. So fiscal 2018, 2019, no new net taxes. In fiscal 2020, we gave back taxes. That was the reverse. Reverse income taxes. In fiscal year 2021, no new taxes. In fiscal year 2022, no new taxes. In fiscal year 2023, no new taxes. Fiscal year 2024, no new taxes. fiscal year 2025, no new taxes. Madam Speaker, this new fiscal year, for the first time, this JLP administration has had to ask Jamaicans to pay more in SCT for cigarettes, non-alcoholic sweetened beverages, more SCT on liters of pure alcohol, more in environmental levy, tourism activities, and join a lot of other countries to get Jamaica's fair share of the digital world, reduction in duty concession allowance, and continued distribution from the NHG. This is the first time since 2016 that this government has had to ask Jamaicans to pay new taxes. Madam Speaker, I show this slide to tell our young people, those who are 20 years old and would have been finishing primary school when this administration came to government, that we are the government of no new taxes. You can see on the screen that our track record speaks for itself. In the history of the PNP as government, they cannot make that claim. Sadly, they've come to Parliament year after year after year with more taxes, and more taxes. Madam Speaker, I'll take a few minutes on digital services because that's where most of the questions have come from. Taxing digital services ensures fairness, brings in much needed government revenues, keep our tax laws up to date with how people do business, and make sure big companies pay their share. Digital services taxation is now either in place or being discussed in over 100 countries. Madam Speaker, I want to highlight a phenomenon, not just in Jamaica, but I'm sure in other parts of the world. And it's the silent closure of small retail businesses, given the change that has been happening in terms of our ability to easily order whatever we need online without the requisite taxes. This puts our local businesses, our local retailers, at a disadvantage. It is not equitable or fair. Our local businesses have to compete with tax-free items. And I want Jamaicans to consider that it's the people who work in these retail shops, these businesses, who are affected when they close. It is the security guard who is no longer needed at the entrance or no longer needed to direct you where to park. It is the cleaning crew that comes in early in the morning or late at nights that are let go. It is the lease on the building, the electricity and water payments that are no longer made. It is not happening with a loud bang, Madam Speaker, just silently. So the next time you go to a little shop that used to sell little things that you like and it's no longer there, it probably fell victim to items coming in without GCT. Let me hasten to add, though, there's no thought to curtail digital purchases from wherever in the world you wish to buy. You will note you have no trouble getting foreign exchange to make the purchase. I'm simply highlighting a phenomenon that is happening and which, as government, we have to be keyed. Madam Speaker, regarding the request for aligning of the filing and payment dates of annual corporate income tax, I want to say to those who've come to us to have us look at the dates, we're listening, and we ask that you allow us to see the impact of the current dates that we've put forward. TAJ has some concerns that if we change the dates, 2 steps would be involved, but I've asked them to come back to me at the end of the first month, during which this will be implemented, to let me know what the performance has been. But we will assess in the new fiscal year, and we will tell you of our findings. Madam Speaker, I want to say to Jamaicans, capturing our fair share of digital economy revenues is no longer just a good idea, it's essential. It helps diversify our revenue streams so that we are not so reliant on just a few sectors. It brings in much needed funds for our schools, our hospitals, infrastructure, and yes, for rebuilding after Hurricane Melissa. It ensures fairness. If local businesses pay taxes, so should foreign companies profiting from our market. Madam Speaker, this isn't about creating new burdens. No. It is about making sure the new digital landscape works for Jamaica, just as much as it works for the giant global companies. We are embracing the future, but ensuring that future is one where Jamaica gets its fair share. Hear, hear. Madam Speaker, I've come to the end of my presentation. And as I conclude the fiscal year 2025-26 budget presentation, while I cannot say for the 11th year in a row no new taxes, I can certainly say no additional revenue measures. I will remind Jamaicans that come April 1, the new threshold takes effect, 1.9 million threshold. And to say to our public sector workers as well, the government's offer remains on the table. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say again to all Jamaicans, you can bank on us. You have seen our performance, and we will take this nation safely through whatever the world throws at us, whatever the climate throws at us. We have the capability, we have the leadership to take Jamaica through any adversity. And so, I want to say thank you to my constituents again, to my family who puts up with long nights, early mornings, gone on weekends, never seeing me. Thank you for your dedication and for your love. Madam Speaker, let me close by saying, may God bless Jamaica, land we love.